You have just tuned in to this special bulletin. Washington has confirmed that yesterday, on the 4th of October, 1957, the Soviet Union successfully launched history's first man-made satellite into space orbit around the Earth.
The founding of NASA broke political, physical, and scientific barriers by landing a man on the moon and creating a public, civilian-based space administration before any other nation could. Even though America was first in flight when the Wright brothers sailed through the skies of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina in 1903, it became apparent during World War I that America had been surpassed by European countries in aviation technology. In order to catch up in the war, America established the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics on March 3, 1915. NACA, as it came to be known, was formed as an independent government agency reporting directly to the President, Woodrow Wilson. NACA was a federal government agency focused on promoting the advancement of aeronautical technology for our U.S. military. NACA was described during World War II as the force behind our air supremacy. It was largely responsible for advancements in wing profile technologies and for producing superchargers for high-altitude bombers. NACA led the research, development, and testing of the Bell X-1 supersonic aircraft. The Bell X-1, flown by Air Force test pilot Chuck Yeager, was the first aircraft to break the sound barrier when it exceeded Mach 1 on October 14, 1947. NACA was the closest thing the U.S. had to a space administration at the time, although spaceflight was not a priority. NACA was a closed-off government organization with a focus on military aviation advancement that the average U.S. citizen had little to no knowledge about. Despite its focus on military air combat supremacy, NACA was chosen to provide the framework for the organization we know today as NASA. On July 1, 1957, President Dwight D. Eisenhower announced plans to put an artificial space satellite into orbit, with the stated goal of gathering scientific data about the Earth. To everyone's surprise, the Soviet Union launched the world's first space satellite, Sputnik, into orbit around the Earth on October 4, 1957. The successful launch of Sputnik fueled Cold War fears that the Soviet Union might use Sputnik or similar spacecrafts to establish military dominance of space. Similar to the circumstances that led to the creation of NACA in World War I, the United States found themselves lagging behind other great military rivals, and they knew they had to act swiftly in order to secure the safety of our nation. On November 25, 1957, then-Senator Lyndon B. Johnson began congressional hearings to explore the formation of a new American space program. A vital figure in the formation of the new U.S. space program was Dr. Eileen Galloway. Dr. Galloway assisted Lyndon B. Johnson in his preparation for the congressional hearings on how to deal with what was viewed at the time as a military problem. Dr. Galloway recommended that the new space organization be an administration rather than a government agency. This would allow for better planning and coordination across other federal agencies, whose cooperation would be necessary for the success of the newly formed body.
Outer space could be used for peaceful purposes, and there were a variety of peaceful purposes. There were communication, weather, medicine, and we then saw that instead of fear of war, we could be motivated by hope for peace.
Alongside Lyndon Johnson, Eileen Galloway played an important role in establishing the structure of the new space administration. She sought to provide the new body with international authority committed to the peaceful uses and exploration of space in cooperation with our allies. From this, it was determined that we would form an open, public administration visible to the citizens of the United States, rather than a secretive military project. On July 29, 1958, President Eisenhower signed the Space Act into law. This law marked the creation of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. NASA was born. On May 5, 1961, nearly 3 years after the creation of NASA, Alan Shepard became the first U.S. man in space when he orbited the Earth for 108 minutes in NASA's Mercury capsule. In September of 1962, President John F. Kennedy announced plans to break the biggest scientific, physical, and political barrier of all by landing a man on the moon.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
NASA was officially created over 60 years ago, and since then, they have done more work in space than any other nation. NASA has achieved one of its many stated goals of visiting every planet in our solar system, and has plans to return a man to the moon by 2024. They have also partnered with private space companies such as SpaceX with an eye towards leading astronauts to Mars by the year 2030. Although NASA may have been formed out of fear of the Soviet Union's military dominance in space, it has since proven itself to be the world's premier agency for peaceful space exploration. NASA has also become the world's leader in Earth climate and geological studies. The data collected by NASA is shared freely with scientists all over the globe for the betterment of all mankind. Although one of the primary goals of the space race and the founding of NASA was to beat the Soviet Union, it was also more than that. Human beings, more than any other species, are driven by wonder. Our constant search for answers is what keeps us moving forward. America's efforts in space during the late 1950s and early 1960s were also about our personal drive and determination to see what is beyond us.